We start. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Inshallah, we will continue with our discussion on the Seerah of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa ali. We covered two discussions on the age of ignorance, the era of Jahiliyyah. It's a very important discussion, and a lot more can be said about it, because the more you understand the era of Jahiliyyah, the better you will understand the seerah of the Prophet as well. Because at the end of the day, the Prophet will be living in that environment, and he will be dealing with the society of the Arabs, and you have to know what the rules and regulations and the conventions and the protocols and the customs, what all those things actually were, in order for you to understand the struggle of the Prophet as well. But inshallah, for our short, because of the short time that we have, we try to mention a couple of things in these two sessions. In this session, I will now begin with the actual discussion on the birth of the Holy Prophet, and then let's see how far we can get. There's a lot of things that I'm going to have to remove because of time. Before the incident of the elephant Abraha, before the attack on the Kaaba by Abraha, or the attempted attack on the Kaaba by Abraha, the Surah Al-Fil, Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil, before that entire incident happens, the grandfather of the Holy Prophet, Abdul Muttalib, goes to the house of Wahab bin Abd Munaf and his wife Barra bint Abdul Uzza, and they have a daughter named Aminah. And Aminah is from the clan of Bani Zuhra. Okay, they're from a clan called Bani Zuhra. And Abdul Muttalib goes and he proposes marriage for his son, who is his most beloved son, Abdullah. And he says that I want to propose for your daughter. And Aminah is a lady who is known for her chastity and nobility and modesty in Mecca. If I had the PowerPoints and the slides, maybe in the later sessions I can bring some of those out to show you guys the map of Mecca, exactly where were the different clans and different families living. You would see that even in Mecca there was an entire district, what we call the red light district today. They had an entire district like that in Mecca, just on the outskirts of, not even on the outskirts, in Mecca, right? So there were women like that, or people like that, and they would have an indication in Mecca by putting a certain flag on top of their roofs. So in that society, this Jahiliyyah society, for somebody, a lady to stand out, it will be very well known. And hence why you find these descriptions about Lady Aminah, you find these descriptions also about Lady Khadija, salamullah alayha, okay? So they go and they propose, and they accept the marriage proposal of Abdul Muttalib, and they said, we will marry Abdullah. There are some other stories here as well in the Seerah books on how this, marriage took place and proposal took place. They don't seem too authentic. They're a little bit interesting. Like some of them are like, strange. So they're not so authentic. So I don't want to quote those. But anyways, Abdul Muttalib, around the same time, or just maybe a few years earlier, had also married another wife whose name was Hala. And through Hala, he has the son Hamza. Hamza, who will become the uncle of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hamza and the Prophet are very close in age. So depending on when you say he married Hala, either he's only a few months older than the Prophet or just a few years older than the Prophet. When Abdullah marries Aminah, she conceives, okay, she is expecting, and Abdullah goes on a very large trade journey towards Sham. Okay, they go towards Syria, and right after marriage, so this is now a newly married couple, but the husband has to go to for this business caravan, and he goes to Sham. He goes, and on the way back there is a plague that is taking place in Arabia. Okay, so there's a plague. Also, it has struck Sham and Palestine and these regions. There's a plague. It's a well-known, documented plague. So on the way back, Abdullah falls sick, and he spends a month or two extra in Gaza. So from Gaza, he is there, spends a few extra, some extra weeks. From Gaza, he catches another caravan and he comes back to Medina. He stops in Medina, and now from Medina, the caravan gets up and they're making their way to Mecca. But Abdullah does not join them because he's too sick. He's not feeling well. As the caravan approaches Mecca, the women and the children, the family members, they all come on the outskirts of Mecca because they know the caravans are coming. They've been gone for months. And they come back, and Aminah is also there. She's somebody who's expecting, and she's waiting for her husband to come back. They barely spent any time together. She goes on the outskirts and she sees, the children running to their fathers, and family members have come back. And Aminah is standing there, wondering where is her husband, where is Abdullah. Abdul Muttalib asks also the caravan, where is Abdullah? And they tell him that he was not feeling well, so he's in Medina. So Abdul Muttalib quickly sends another one of his sons to go and look, where he is. And he goes to Medina and he figures out that Abdullah has just passed away just a few days earlier. Okay, because he fell sick and he fell ill and he basically passed away. They bring the report back to Aminah. Now imagine you are a young lady, okay, in Mecca, expecting, and now your husband has passed away. This is a society where the father-son relationship is extremely, extremely important. Okay, if there is no father for the son, you are essentially a yatim. You're essentially going to be born an orphan. And you all know how many references have been made about the aitam, the yatim, in the Quran. Because if you were a yatim, you had no protector. Okay, the clan can protect you, but if there is no father figure, you are very, very vulnerable. Okay, there's not going to be same treatment given to you. For example, we will mention when the Prophet is sent to the wet nurse, that is rare, because if you're an orphan, no one's going to send you to a wet nurse. Inshallah, we'll get to that. Lady Aminah, so you can imagine her struggle that she must have gone through, the psychological sort of trauma that she must have gone through, but she was patient. She had the wisdom to sort of navigate through these difficulties, and eventually she gave birth to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa ali. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When she gives birth, it was a custom in Arabia to give the child to a wet nurse to feed the child. The first wet nurse that the Prophet had was a lady named Thuwayba. Thuwayba was a slave of Abu Lahab, who Abu Lahab had freed. Abu Lahab had freed the slave, and she said, and the reason why he freed her, because she said that I want to go basically serve Aminah and the newborn child that she had. Thuwayba, interestingly speaking, had also fed other children. For example, Ja'far, the brother of Imam Ali alayhi salam. She had also fed Hamza before that. So she was a well-known wet nurse, and she fed also the Prophet for at least a couple of days. Now, after that had happened, there was a custom in Arabia. It was a seasonal custom. Every, I think, 2 times in a year, you would have a clan of nomads, a group of nomads, Bedouin nomads, who would come into Mecca, and they would essentially be coming to get and adopt young boys so that they can take them with them into the deserts. Okay, so these would be wet nurses with their husbands, and they would come into the city of Mecca, and they would get these, boys, take these boys with them. One of these seasons, the Banu Sa'ad clan comes. Banu Sa'ad clan, if you recall, I wrote Hawazin yesterday. Quraysh, and I wrote Hawazin. Hawazin was another tribe. Underneath Hawazin was a clan called Banu Sa'ad. Amongst the Banu Sa'ad, there was one family or one sort of, segment of that clan that lived in the outskirts. Literally, they were nomads. They would just move from one place to another place. One of this Banu Sa'ad comes into Mecca in one of these seasons, and they have an entire group of people who are looking for boys so that they can take from them. The Quraysh are all lined up. All the mothers and the fathers are lined up. They are giving away their sons. Okay, they were giving away their sons. Inshallah, I'll explain why would they do such a practice. The wet nurses had taken all of the sons that had the fathers. Okay, because the ones that had fathers, you have a guarantee that you will get some payment for this. On the other hand, there's one wet nurse by the name of Halima Sa'adiyah. Sa'adiyah is meaning from Banu Sa'ad. Nobody wants to give their son to Halima, because Halima, she seems a little bit weak, and the donkey that they have is also really weak. The camel that they have is also really weak. So nobody wants to give their son to Halima. So now, coincidentally, what ends up happening is that all the wet nurses have taken all the boys who are privileged. They have their fathers with them. They have taken them. And on the other hand, Halima is left alone. She does not have anyone to take because nobody wants to give their son. And on the contrary, nobody wants to take the son of Aminah, which is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because everyone who passes by this says there's no father here. There's no father. It's just Aminah standing. Aminah is also really weak, and a grandfather is there, but grandfather is not the same as the father. So they passed by her. They said, no, there's no guarantee of payment here. This is an orphan. So coincidentally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes this match. Halima says to her husband that I don't want to go back to my clan and tell them that nobody gave me a son. There is this one child over here, let's just take him. And the husband says, let's just take him. Maybe God will give us some blessings through this child. So this is how they end up taking, the Prophet. As soon as they take the Prophet, the clan begins to realize that, wow, Halima's donkey is pretty fast. Because on the way to Mecca, they were the slowest in the whole caravan. So it begins to go really fast. And these sort of little karamat, little miracles are happening and people are observing, but nobody obviously at that time is making a connection. Why would the elite of Quraysh send their young boys at such a young age, at 1 year old or even less than 1 year old, and send them into the desert? What was the point of that? What was the reason for this practice? There were a couple of reasons that they would do this. Firstly, they would do this so the child can become stronger. Because look, if you are in the desert, you are always going to be your lifestyle is very different than living in the city. The lifestyle in a city is a very predictable life. Okay, even if it is in Mecca of that time, it is a very predictable life. You know what you have on your plate tomorrow, because trade caravan has come. There's some money on the table. Tomorrow you have your roti and salan. But when you are a nomad, you are always on the lookout. You're not even sure whether you're gonna find water tomorrow. You're not sure about that. You're not sure whether a wolf will come and eat one of your assets, which is your camel and your sheep. So there's always this unpredictability when you live in the deserts. So the elite will send their children with these nomads, so the child develops a sense of trust and tawakkul. They build this trust. Now whether they're saying trust on the idols or trust on, the Hunafa would say trust on, this one God, this one deity that exists. But that was something that they would do. A second reason why they would send their children is to actually learn Arabic. You're like, what? Learn Arabic? They're Arabs. But in any city where there are foreigners coming in all the time, Yemeni people are coming, people from Medina are coming, people from Sham are coming, people from different places are coming, the Arabic will slowly deteriorate. Little bit, it will deteriorate. There will be some foreign words in there. So they will send their children to the nomadic tribes because there was pure Arabic over there. In 2nd century Hijri, 3rd century Hijri, when Arabic was basically finished, like the pure Fusha Arabic was very deteriorated, one of the greatest grammarians by the name of Sibawayh. Sibawayh was one of the greatest grammarians. What did he do? He said, there is no more tribes left who speak clear Arabic. So he decided to leave Iran, went to Arabia. He found a nomadic tribe in the desert, and he lived with them. And he wrote the most important book that we have in grammar today. It is called Al-Kitab. That's how important the book is. Al-Kitab, meaning Sibawayh's book. Al-Kitab, meaning the book of grammar. That is the last record we have of the last spoken, clear Fusha of that era at the very least. Okay. So likewise, that's why they would send these boys there. Now, what happens is, after 2 years, these wet nurses bring the children back. Now, as per the records, what we have is that Halima Sa'adiyah also brings the Prophet back. But when she brings the boy back, she is so attached to him, she says to Lady Aminah that, look, please give me 2 more years. Lady Aminah is saying, how can I give my son for 2 more years? I've already been away for 2 years. You want to take him away for 2 more years? Halima insists and insists and insists. And according to most reports, Lady Aminah gets convinced. She says, okay, take him. Now this time when Halima takes the Prophet, now obviously he's a bit older, 3 years, 4 years. Over here, we can speculate the type of skill sets that a young boy in Arabia would have been learning. Okay, we can speculate. For example, he would probably learn, rock climbing and mountain climbing. He would probably learn a little bit about, how to be a shepherd. He would probably learn how to go up the mountains and in these caves and there's beehives, and how to put your hand in the beehives and take out honey. So they would take these boys, these men, and that boy's hands are very small. So they would ask the boy, they would put something on it, like a smoke or something, and they would get the boys to put their hands in the beehive and take the honey out. This we can speculate the Prophet would have been taught these type of things in the desert. In the city, he would not have learned this. In the city of Makkah, he would not have learned these type of things. Even though, look, for us today, the city of Makkah seems like a village. But at that time, compare the Makkah to the nomad, there was a very prominent city. Trade is coming in and the Kaaba is there and so on. So this is something that we can assume. Now, in this event, the second time where Halima Sa'adiyah takes the Prophet, there's a very interesting event that is recorded in the books of history, which the Ahlul Sunnah, all of them accept this. And the Shia, all of them reject this. Okay? But because it is an important event, which is a dispute between Shia and Sunni, I will mention it so everybody knows what is this event. And it's quoted in the books of the Seerah. Lady Halima says that by Allah, after a few months of our return, meaning she was meant to go and they came back, he and his brother, so the Prophet and his brother, meaning the foster brother, Halima's own son, were with our lambs behind our dwellings when his brother came running to us. So the young boy, 4, 5, 6 years old, he came running to the mother Halima. He said, "Two men in white have seized my Qurayshi brother and thrown him down and ripped open his chest and are moving it up. We ran towards him and found him standing with a pale face." So Halima is saying, I ran with my son to the Prophet and found him standing with a pale face. We embraced him, asking him what had happened. He says, "Two men in white garments came, laid me down, ripped open my chest, looking for something which I do not know." So he says, Halima says, we took him back to our tents. In another report, it says what these are supposedly angels. They are coming and they take the heart of the Prophet out, and there's a black dark spot in the heart of the Prophet, and they clean it up and they put it back in the chest of the Prophet, and that's it. They patch him up, they stitch him up, and that's it. This event is called Shaqqu Sadr, the event of the cleaving of the chest. Many Ahlul Sunnah scholars, they say, Alam nashrah laka sadrak is for about this. Did we not expand your chest? Okay, we expanded your chest. What is the purpose of this event? Why do the Ahlul Sunnah accept this event? What does this event mean? They say, don't you believe in Isma? They say, yeah, we believe in Isma. The Ahlul Sunnah, they believe in Isma, by the way. They believe the Prophet cannot make mistakes, okay? They cannot make sins, he cannot mistake, he cannot say something wrong. They say, well, how did he get ma'soom? How did he become ma'soom? They said like this. This is the event, one of the main events that the Ahlul Sunnah will use to say this is Isma. There was a dark spot in the heart of the Prophet. These angels came, they removed that, and that's how he became ma'soom. He became protected from this. For the Shia, we do not accept this narrative because of 2-3 arguments that we can give. Number one, there's a very important narrator in this story by the name of Thawr bin Yazid al-Shami. Yazid al-Shami should give you that he is from Sham and he's an Umawi. The Umayyas believed in this idea of sort of predestination, meaning that if you must have all heard that they justified their politics by saying this is Allah's will. Allah wanted it to be this way, this qadr. This Thawr bin Yazid is from that school of thought. So you have a little bit of doubt saying that, look, this guy could have fabricated this to say that the Prophet, whatever he did, he was forced to do it because they did this operation on him. Now he's like a robot. To sort of show that, everything is just jabr. Everything is just predetermined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, you can show that the Umayyi Khalifa is also, the Caliphate is also like that. This narrator is a little bit problematic. Number two reason we can doubt it is that, look, we have our own arguments for Isma. And we say the Prophet is already pure. What do you mean so you're saying he was impure, he was born impure, and then Allah had to do a surgical procedure to remove this impurity from him. Okay? And the problem is that this narration is saying there is a physical expansion of the chest and the removing of the heart. Is Isma and purity of the heart something physical or spiritual? Something spiritual. So how can you say that I will remove a physical dark spot and automatically you will become spiritually protected? Doesn't make sense. The person fabricating this was not maybe thinking this complicated. Okay, so what we're trying to say is that spiritual purification does not need a medical or surgical procedure. That's what we're trying to say. And this narration seems to be, saying the opposite. And another question we can ask: how come this event only happened with our Prophet? Don't you believe all the other prophets are also infallible? Okay, so how come for other prophets we do not see this sort of an event? How come we don't see this for Prophet Isa? How come we don't see this for any of the other prophets that Allah sent two angels and then they did a surgical procedure for them? What's wrong with, how come we don't see this? So with these sort of critiques, we can say that, look, this event, we do not have any reason to trust it. There are problematic narrators in this, and there's this inconsistency in this as well. But reason why I'm mentioning this is because all the Ahlul Sunnah agree with this. So you should know when there is difference of opinion, why they accept it and why we reject it. Okay? Anyone wants more advanced information on this, inshallah, meet me after iftar. There is one Shia scholar in our history who accepts this. And I will, you have to come to me if you want to know about that. And why did they accept this? And what is our response to that? Shia scholar, very prominent Shia scholar, inshallah. I will not even mention the name. You guys will see. I'll see who's interested. Okay. We're going to now skip a lot of events. There's this event of Harbul Fijar, something called the Fijar Wars. There's something called the Hilful Fudul. We're even skipping the event of Abraha. We did not talk about Abraha, the attempted attack on the Kaaba. We're going to skip all of those things, and we are going to go straight to the marriage of the Prophet with Lady Khadija Salamullah alayha. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. By the time the Prophet in his late teenage years or early 20s, he is also working with a trade caravan. And the trade caravan that he's working for is Abu Talib's. So just on a side note, Lady Aminah passes away when the Prophet is 6, and Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather, passes away when the Prophet is 9 years old. So from 9 years onwards, he is under the guardianship of and the protection of Abu Talib, the father of Imam Ali alayhi salam. So anyways, he's growing up and he starts working for the trade caravan of Abu Talib. And many of you have heard stories, they would go to Syria. Most of them would go to Syria, and the Prophet would join them on this journey. So he had learned a lot of these, business skills, entrepreneurial skills, how to sell product, how to sell items. And he had sort of become famously known for As-Sadiq and Al-Amin. For this reason, by the way. As-Sadiq and Al-Amin was not known just because he spoke the truth. I'm sure many other people spoke truth as well in Arabia. But the reason why he was known for this predominantly was because of his business practices. And that's why you find the Quran, do not cheat, do not usurp, do not steal the wealth. Because that time is not like you have today QuickBooks. You can put in the accounting numbers on there and everybody knows who is cheating, who is not cheating, what is the balance. No, over there, it's just you're going on this long journey and you're on your own. The person investing in you is just trusting you. So it's very easy to cheat. Very, very easy to cheat in these type of businesses. So the Prophet ﷺ would go on these journeys. I wish you guys would sit over here because now I have to sort of sit like this. Just to sort of, and my neck is, we used to have Maulana Sadiq Hassan used to come here when I was younger. He's the only Maulana who would say, don't come close, sit back, because my neck keeps getting hurt. So it's one of those situations where my neck is just a little bit aching looking at you guys over there. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Okay. When the Prophet, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is in Medina around the age of early 20s now, 22, 23. There's a lady named Lady Khadija, salamun alayha. She is the daughter of Khuwaylid, a man named Khuwaylid. Khadija bint Khuwaylid, her name is. And she is given a tip, like somebody tips her that there's a man by the name of Muhammad and he seems pretty good in these business, business deals. You may want to consider, taking him on for your trade caravan. Who is Lady Khadija? There's a lot of interesting discussions about her and a lot of unknown facts about her as well. For example, there's a lot of confusion. How did she get all this money? She is known to be the princess or the queen of Quraysh, very rich, one of the richest lady of Quraysh living in Mecca. The question is, in that time where women didn't work, they maybe did some work, but it's not like they were going on trade caravans and women are going to Syria and Palestine and these regions to trade. So then how is she making money? Over here, there are multiple theories. Some say she had previous husbands, 2 previous husbands, and this money that she had was just, their money. They passed away and this is their money. Some say no, she was never married before. She was never married before, but this was the wealth of her father. She got an inheritance. So these type of ikhtilafat exist. And as, to be honest, these are not just Sunni Shia ikhtilafat. Even amongst Shia scholars, there's ikhtilaf, and not new ikhtilaf, old ikhtilaf. Since the old days, Shia scholars said, was she 27 at the time of marriage, or 28, or 30, or 35, or 40, or 45? This is ikhtilafat, and you can imagine that these type of ikhtilafat exist. Even when we commemorate wiladat, shahadat, it's always 2, 3, 5 days. Because honestly, guys, nobody cared. Nobody cared. There's no birth certificates. There's no, go to the hospital or record it down. There was no calendar. Even the Hijri calendar is not there. So this is very, very difficult. They will just remember things by the year of an event. Amul Fil. Amul Fil. Okay, year of the elephant. Year of the meteor shower. Year of this. Year of the flood. This is how they would remember. And this is a time, Lady Khadija, there's no Islam right now. The Prophet is not declared as prophethood. So Lady Khadija's significance for Islamic reasons is not there right now. That will get developed later on when the declaration will happen. So it's very, very normal to not know these things. Get used to not knowing certain things, please. Get used to not knowing certain details. And please, let's not argue over details. Things that really make no difference at the end of the day. Did she have, 2 husbands or 1 husband? Did she have this daughter, that daughter? Where did the money come from? We don't know. We just know that she was the richest lady of Quraysh. Okay. Now, the Prophet is somebody tips her servant. Her servant's name is Maysara. Maysara says to Lady Khadija, this man seems very interesting. You may want to get him to come out for your trade caravan. She says, okay. She allows him to come. Over here, there is another confusion that many people have. And that is that many people say that the Prophet was an employee of Lady Khadija salamullah alayha. She hired him as an employee, as an ajir. And what this sort of misunderstanding does, particularly in the last, I would say, from the 1950s, let's say, onwards, 50, 60 years, because of this misunderstanding, there has been a misinterpretation about the role of Lady Khadija in Islam. And particularly this misinterpretation is pushed generally by certain feminist readings of Islam. What do certain feminist readings say? They say Lady Khadija was a businesswoman, okay? And the Prophet was her employee. So she is, dominating the Prophet. Look, in Islam, legally speaking, there's nothing wrong if a woman is a boss and a man is the owner. There's nothing legally wrong with that. We're not questioning that. What we're questioning is, can you use this relationship as a precedent to argue for its being ideal? That's what we're trying to get at. Let's try to think very logically over here. We're trying to say, can this relationship, this employment relationship, be used as a precedent for certain feminist readings that push Lady Khadija as the businesswoman of that time? We say absolutely not. Why? Because this was not an employee contract. This was not a contract of an ajir. The Prophet was never an ajir of Lady Khadija. The Prophet was what I've drawn on this board. If the brothers can also move the camera there so they can see. What contract was this? This contract is actually called a mudaraba. Mudaraba contract. What happens in a mudaraba contract? In a mudaraba contract, you have one party who actually has the money. The investor, they have the capital. In this situation, Lady Khadija has the money. But they actually have no knowledge and no know-how on what to do with this money. They're not experienced. So what do? It's like almost like a partnership. So the person that has the money is called Rabbul Mal, the owner of the mal, owner of the wealth. They will get a person to come who will be the mudarib. Mudarib is not an ajir. Mudarib is actually the entrepreneur. The mudarib is the one who is going to make the entire business. So Lady Khadija hires the Prophet as a mudarib. She says, here's all my money. Go do whatever you want to do with it. Okay? So there's a project, which I've drawn. Here's a project. For example, there's a trade caravan. Lady Khadija says, these are all my assets. I'm hiring you as a mudarib. You please take control of this. Do whatever you want. And they set a rate. They say, if you make a profit, for example, we'll split 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, whatever. It doesn't matter, like whatever they decide to do. And if there is a loss, who incurs the loss? The Rabbul Mal. So the Rabbul Mal is putting their complete trust in the entrepreneur. Complete trust in them. Okay? And therefore the mudarib has to be extremely trustworthy and truthful. The mudarib can go to Sham and steal all the assets and run away and live their life in a mansion in Syria, for example. It can do that. Who's gonna catch them? There's no international police at that time, right? So this is the thing. In this relationship, you cannot interpret Lady Khadija's role as a businesswoman. Businesswoman or entrepreneur or entrepreneurship means a person has an idea on how to sort of take an investment and what to do with it. Lady Khadija did not do that. Okay, Lady Khadija did not do that. These type of terms and characterizing these earlier Islamic personalities, this is called anachronism. Anachronism. We are very, very used to doing anachronistic interpretations. For example, we will say Imam Sadiq was the greatest scientist to ever live. This is wrong. Do you guys know what does it mean to be a scientist? Scientist is a term that was made in 19th century. Scientist means a person who comes, he experiments, he thinks, and he's thinking and gives a theory. That's what is a scientist. And you're saying Imam Sadiq is the greatest scientist. Does Imam Sadiq have to think? I think maybe this is a good theory. If I ask you a question, Imam Sadiq was the greatest mujtahid, what would you guys say? No. Who said yes? He's not a mujtahid. Imam Sadiq is not a mujtahid. In imamat, you're believing there's a divine knowledge. There's no ijtihad. Ijtihad means you're thinking, speculating. This is a hadith, okay, I think this means this, this means that. They're not mujtahid. Scientists is the same thing. They're theorizing, they're experimenting, they're figuring out. These things are all modern languages and we're just applying on them. 1400 years ago, when these things didn't even exist. Likewise, a businesswoman, the term I'm pretty sure is a very recent term. We have to see whether that definition is applicable in that time. At that time, Lady Khadija is not considered a businesswoman at all, okay? Once again, I'm not talking about the legalities of this. If you have a woman who is a businesswoman today and there's a man under her who's an ajir, is it problematic? No, nobody says it's problematic. I'm saying, can we push certain narratives which are completely wrong? This is a wrong narrative, and you're essentially misinterpreting the seerah of the Prophet to drive home an agenda. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying we should be careful with that, okay? Lady Khadija, she hires the Prophet over here in this mudarib. She makes him sort of like a semi-partner, and he goes to Sham, and she sends Maysara, that slave, that servant, with him. And she says, go and observe how his business dealings are. Anyways, he goes and the Prophet doubles the investment. He doubles the investment and he comes back to Mecca with this huge profit. And now Maysara begins to tell her that this man is what I observed in this man was something I have never observed in any man. The way he was delicate with the merchandise, the way he was making sure that nothing is damaged on the way to Sham, the way he was making sure that how he is selling the product, he's very truthful. He's not deceiving the customer. He's not cheating the customer. The way he is setting the price for the products, he's not overcharging. All of these qualities, Maysara begins to mention. He says, I didn't see anything, because obviously when you're in a business, you want to sell. If you want to sell, you want to maybe like do a little bit of deception. At the very least, you want to when you're marketing, you do a little bit of deception so you can sell your product. He says, I did not see anything. And this is abnormal. Guys, this is abnormal. Okay, this is abnormal. This is not normal. He says this is something so strange. He's so truthful and so trustworthy that I did not observe anything. And with these practices, with these business practices, he doubled the profit. He doubled your profit and the tactics that he used. At that time, there is another lady by the name of Nafisa, who is the friend of Lady Khadija. She's also hearing and observing and seeing all of these things. She gives a suggestion to Lady Khadija. She says, look, this man is single and he's trustworthy and he is truthful. He has all the good qualities. Why don't you consider marrying him? So she is given a suggestion, and Lady Khadija accepts the suggestion, and she sends a proposal via this friend of hers, Nafisa. Her name was Nafisa. Now, we don't have much detail, how did the proposal get to the Prophet and so on, but it is definitely true that Lady Khadija initiated the proposal, not the Prophet. She initiated this, okay? Now, what age was this? What was the age of the Prophet at the time of marriage? There is almost no difference of opinion that the Prophet was around 25 years old at this time. But there is a huge difference of opinion on the age of Lady Khadija. Okay, Shia and Sunni. And within Shia ikhtilaf and within Sunnis ikhtilaf. As I said, it's very difficult. So the ages they have given are, they say she was also 25. Some say no, she was also 28. Some say no, she was 30. Some say she was 40, which is the sort of the most famous one. Some say she was 45. Okay? Look, it's, as I said, it's very difficult to figure out, because if you put her at a very late age, the Prophet right now is 25. Okay, 15 years later will be the declaration of prophethood. Okay, so if she is 40, that means she's going to be 55 at the declaration of prophethood. Then she passes away pretty much 10 years after, the prophet declaration and the boycott. Okay, 10, 12 years later. So she's hitting like late 60s. If you put her at 45, she's already at 70. Would she live that long? Because we have records saying she was around 60. So she cannot be that old at the time of marriage. I'm just showing you like how you would have to figure this out. It's not easy to figure these things out. Okay. Did she have any children? This is also once again ikhtilafat of the Shia and the Sunni. Did she have children? The Ahlul Sunnah mostly say no, she did not have any children. Those daughters that were there were the daughters of her sister, and the rest of the daughters that the Prophet had, Ruqayya, Kulsum, Zainab, these are all the daughters of the Prophet from Lady Khadija, and obviously Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. These are ikhtilafat amongst Ahlul Sunnah and the Shia. Okay, were they the daughters of her, were they her nieces? Were they her own biological daughters? This is ikhtilaf. But what is true is that she did give birth to two boys. Both of them, unfortunately, died in infancy, which was also a very, it was a norm. It was a norm for boys to die children to die in infancy. Okay, and these things also, once again, put question mark on her age. Was she really that old? If you're gonna say she was giving birth and she's hitting 40s, 50s, you can question these sort of things. Okay, who read the nikah? Okay, who read the nikah? From the side of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the nikah was read by Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The nikah was recited by Abu Talib. Okay, he's recited by Hazrat Abu Talib. On the side of Lady Khadija, it is recited by her cousin named Warqa bin Nawfal. Warqa bin Nawfal is from the Hunafa. He's from those muwahid who believes in one God, and he is the one who recited the nikah. And we actually have the nikah nama or the khutbah. We actually have it recorded, preserved. What did they recite in it? Okay. Once that is done, guys, the next sort of 15 years, the Prophet is going to be in this marriage. He is continuing to be a mudari for Lady Khadija. He is engaging in this business transaction, so on. But look, the wealth, majority of the wealth will be whose? It will be the Rabbul Mal. It will be Lady Khadija's wealth, majority of it. The Prophet will get some share of it, whatever percentage they do. And hence, during this time period, the Prophet begins to go towards the cave of Hira. And he begins to meditate. Now remember, he had already been accustomed to this idea of, just going out of the city when he was young with Lady Halima, going out of the city, looking into the stars and the skies and into the mountains. So he had found this cave of Hira, and he would go into this cave and he would begin to meditate. Whatever spiritual reflection and refinement that he would do, he would go into that. And those who you have been to Hira, you could see the Kaaba. I don't know if you can see it now with those buildings, but back in those days, you could actually see the Kaaba. So he would have been able to see at least some sort of light or torch or something from that area, right? This continues for 15 years until one night. So look, this is actually for tomorrow, but I will just sort of give a preliminary right now. This is more for tomorrow's discussion. When did the Prophet realize he's a prophet? The Ahlul Sunnah say he did not know anything. He did not know anything. At the age of 40, he got a surprise. The Shia do not believe this. The Shia, we do not believe this. We say no, he is a prophet from birth. It is just a matter of declaration. When is he going to announce it? Bi'tha, when is he going to be sent forth with this announcement? According to Shi'i reports, for example, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says that Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, that the Prophet Jibreel had already started to come to him at the age of around 37. Okay, at the age of 37, the Prophet Jibreel is already coming to the Prophet. And he had also already begun to teach him some very basic things. For example, the qira'ah of Bismillah and Fatiha, and also how to do wudu. And also he taught him a form of salat, which is not the form of salat we do today. Does not have, the rak'at and the ruku and the sajda. What it is, inshallah, maybe tomorrow I will explain that. So at the age of 37, he already knows. He already knows that, okay, a message has to be declared. At the age of 40, one night when he is in the cave of Hira, is when Jibreel alayhi salam comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is when he says Iqra. Okay, tomorrow inshallah I will end short over here. Tomorrow we will talk about the declaration of the prophethood, what exactly happened, why do the Ahlul Sunnah make a whole scene. He was confused, he didn't know what he was doing, he wanted to throw himself off the mountain, suicide, he didn't know, and Warqa bin Nawfal told him, no, you're a prophet. Is this true? Is this not true? Why are they saying this? Do they disrespect the Prophet? They say we don't disrespect the Prophet, so why do they believe in this? Do all of their scholars believe in this? You will realize not all of them, even some of their scholars are like, this doesn't seem good. So inshallah tomorrow we will talk about the declaration, and we will talk about the first recitation, which is Iqra. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. We'll explain what is Jibreel asking the Prophet to recite. If you say he is asking the Prophet to recite the Quran, you're assuming there's a physical book. There is no physical book at that time. So what is he's asking him to read? If I come to you and say Iqra, I say Iqra what? Like, what do you want me to read? You're not showing me anything. Or if you're saying Iqra, read this surah. Well, he's not telling him to read a surah. He's saying Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. This, with the Ahlul Sunnah view, it will not make sense, this surah. With the Shi'i view, inshallah, I've already mentioned, at the age of 37, Jibreel has already come. He is already practicing some of these rituals. In the vicinity of the Kaaba, there is an event that will happen in the Kaaba by Abu Jahl, and Prophet will be frustrated and annoyed that what are these mushrikeen doing to me? And hence he will go into the cave doing meditating, and Jibreel will come and say, no, you cannot be frustrated by the acts of the mushrikeen. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Go back to Mecca, go back to the Kaaba, and recite what you have been taught to recite, which is this form of salat, which form of ibadah. Go and continue reading it, and for more details you can listen to lesson number 1 of the tafsir, where I go into detail of Surah Al-Alaq. I will not cover that in this seerah, but inshallah tomorrow we will talk about the declaration of the prophethood, and as well as the first early revelation, inshallah. وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين.